Faith has caught Scott and Sharon kissing, and as far as Nikki, we don't know exactly what she's up to, but one thing is obvious, she's stealing money from Victor. Stay tuned for this week's Restless Wrap.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Hey everybody, I'm Rachel Goodman and I'm here to discuss this week's Young The Restless Wrap. You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at Rach Goodman or on Facebook at Rachel Ann Goodman. You can also follow the Restless Wrap Facebook group at Restless Wrap. Before we get into everything that went on in Young and Restless this week, I just want to take a moment to just do a quick announcement. So I'm just going to read from a little sheet that we have, just kind of making this announcement. So fans, before we dive into Young and the Restless today, we have an exciting opportunity. We know that you all love Young and the Restless, but do you happen to also be a fan of Spanish language telenovelas and soaps? Shows like Yo Soy Betty, La Fe, La Reina del Sur, or La Candida, and I am so sorry if I mispronounced those. If so, AfterBuzz wants to hear about it, and we may have a chance for you to share your passion for Spanish telenovelas with the world. So if you're interested and you want to hear more, please reach out to SpanishSoapTV@gmail.com. Again, that's SpanishSoapTV@gmail.com, and we'll send you more details. So that's all for the read. Now let's get into the actual show because we have a lot here. And I just want to say thank you to everyone in the chat who's joined us. We have Demo, Aaron, Taylor, Simone, Hubby Joe. That's everyone right now, and I will continue reading names as people join, but we have 1 week to talk about here. So let's dive in and discuss Chancellor Park before we get any further. We kind of opened up this week with the idea that Newman Enterprises is trying to get rid of, well, not get rid of Chancellor Park, but basically what they want to do is they want to build some kind of commercial complex with some housing and bulldoze the park that was named in that was named after Katherine in her legacy. Now, as we kind of started watching here, Nick is obviously very against this happening. He wants the park to stay there, and I'm with Nick. I wouldn't want this coming in either, even though Victoria and Victor have made some good points that basically they'd be helping to bring in revenue and help the area. And Victor even tells Nikki at one point that the homes that they're bringing in would be low rent cost homes. So yeah, it does sound great, but getting rid of the park does not sound worth it in my opinion and in the opinion of Nick and Nikki. So I'm on their team with this. What do you guys who are listening in the chat, what do you guys think? Do you think that Victor should get his way? Well, he's not going to get his way because as it turns out he doesn't get the bid, but in the event that he had gotten the bid, do you guys think that Victor was making a good point by saying that by doing this he would actually bring in more money to Genoa City or not? So as this week is kind of going on, we see from Nick that he's trying to get people together to basically speak out against this. He's handing out flyers. Nikki goes to speak to Victor about this, which is when Victor basically tells her his reasons, which, yeah, okay, fine, they did sound pretty good, but not good enough to knock down a park. Meanwhile, Nick goes to Devon and says, hey, can you put a bid in and can you buy the place? And at first, Devon doesn't want to do this because he figures it's going to be a conflict of interest because obviously Victor is now one of his clients through the PR company that Neil is running. So we're going to see that a lot this week. There's a lot with conflict of interest, and a lot of times that's broken, but in this circumstance, Devon actually doesn't want to go against the Newmans because of being involved with them in his business. In the end, though, Devon does place a bid, and just a random note too, we see a lot of Billy and Phyllis, and this whole thing with Billy where he's trying to handle his new life, where he's this man of leisure, as they sort of say, and he runs into Nick at one point, and they sort of bond over being able to come together to, well, not necessarily come together, but they bond over the fact that they don't want this park to be bulldozed and turned into a complex. And I get the feeling that eventually they're showing this because eventually Billy and Nick might come together and actually work together on this. After all, they did go to New Orleans together, so obviously they like each other on some level. In the end, we find out that this whole bidding situation happens. And we think it's either going to be Newman Enterprises or Devon because they're the only two that we know of that put the bid in. We find out through Hillary, of all people, that it's actually an anonymous bidder that won, and we don't know what they're going to do. But when they said anonymous, I didn't have any idea who they meant. But now, once we talk about Nikki, now I'm starting to think that she was the one who placed the bid. It would make the most sense. We'll get into that in a second. But let's take a look at some of the comments that we have. Aaron Brody says, seriously, the fact that they destroy Chancellor Park is sickening. Taylor, okay, I really, really, really want to know why Reed is ignoring JT completely. JT had to have done something. That's actually another comment I had on this week in general. As my husband and I were watching, we kept feeling like they were jumping very quickly and not explaining certain things. The JT situation was one of them, because we went, once JT is introduced into the picture again, we go from not having any idea that Reed doesn't like him to Reed not showing up for no real apparent reason. We sort of find out later, but I don't like the way they did it. I really think we needed a scene in there where Reed finds out that JT is back and we get his reaction up front. That would have been a lot better and would have made more sense why Reed didn't show up. There was a lot of like dialogue exposition this week, I thought, where characters were just simply saying, oh, I could feel like the characters, it was written in so they could explain the behaviors of other characters because they didn't maybe have time to show a scene with the other characters, which I felt took away from what was happening in some of the storylines. But everything with Reed and JT was definitely one of those situations. One last thing to say on the Chancellor Park situation. So this kind of goes back to Nikki. When she's talking to Jack, this is right before we find out that she's stolen money from Victor. She's talking to Jack, and of course, there's mention in there of Jack basically reminding her that even though he says that he doesn't want to be romantically involved with her anymore, they're still friends, which made me sad. Because it's like, come on, Jack, you should just be with Nikki. But regardless of that, what Nikki ends up hinting to Jack is that she's done something. She doesn't want to tell Jack because she doesn't want to get him involved. And the way that she said that to Jack, it was as all of this was happening, I thought that what Nikki was going to reveal is that she had been the one to put the anonymous bid in to save the park. And I think that's kind of where they're heading still. That's what it feels like. But at the same time, I'm not sure anymore because they're being a little, it's very kind of sneaky how everything is kind of unraveling. Hubby Joe says, they were jumping fast. One scene, I think they mean JT, was waiting for Reed, and the next scene, Victoria was at the club having coffee with Nikki. Yeah, it was jumping very quickly. Taylor says, I feel like there will be loads of conflict between Reed and JT. Like JT had to have done something awful. Yeah, and it seems like that's what they're trying to set up, but you're right. I don't think that there was enough that they showed us was happening for Reed to be that way toward his dad. Aaron says, what was with the time jumps through the show this week? Yeah, it was certain parts were very odd, the way that they just quickly moved when in the past couple of weeks, well, as far as I've been watching the show, they have not, they've taken things very slowly, which I thought worked. Now, granted, there are moments when, like with everything with the sex ring, I thought they were moving way too slowly. But this week, it was like lightning speed. Simone says, I agree, Rachel. They should show us, not just tell us. I agree, certain things. I get that maybe there are times when they will just want to tell us and move things forward, but this week was very rushed. Demo says, JT is up to something. Taylor Jones, completely agree, Joe. They were jumping wildly episode to episode. Aaron says, JT been working out. I will say this. When they were showing the flashbacks, that guy didn't seem to age. Like, he seemed like, I mean, I don't know what year the flashbacks were from, but JT and Victoria, they look like they're the same age as they did when they were showing the flashbacks, like the wedding scene. Taylor, the pacing is going to be frantic this week. Aaron, Billy hates every guy on Y&R. Jack, Victor, Kane, and now JT. And that's another comment I have, and we'll kind of touch on this a little more later. But, okay, last that I remembered with Billy and Kane is that they were sort of getting along. And Kane even said, kind of jokingly, hey, Billy, if you need a job, you can be a janitor at my company. And they were joking. They got drunk together. Now all of a sudden, Billy doesn't like Kane again, and Kane doesn't like Billy. I don't get that at all. I mean, I get why Billy would be upset, because maybe he's jealous that Kane is now moving up. He's been, now his company is on the list, and he's the 2018 man to watch out for in a good way. So I could see Billy being jealous, but that was another thing I didn't get. It seemed to move so quickly from Billy and Kane kind of sort of getting along and having this bonding moment, and now suddenly they don't like each other again. At least show us that moment when it happens. Show us when Billy decides that he's jealous. Even if Billy doesn't recognize that he's jealous, show us more. Like, show us that reflection scene so that it makes more sense now that Billy is not really liking Kane again. Simone, Billy is jealous because he's the only one with nothing to do. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And that, this was the week of, well, especially the last couple of episodes, this was like the Billy man of leisure week, as far as I'm concerned, because Billy clearly had nothing better to do than sit around texting Phyllis things about what he wanted to do with her in the bedroom while she's on an important meeting with some client, which I thought that scene was hilarious, and that is one of the long moments, and we'll definitely talk about that. Doolaman, Billy is mostly jealous of Kane's relationship with Jill. I can definitely see that too. I just wanted more of a moment where we see Billy go from kind of being okay with Kane to now they're back on really bad terms. At least it looks like. All right, so we've talked about Chancellor Park. Let's talk about Jabot and everything going on with that. Just kind of as a quick note, so everything happening with Ashley and Ravi, I think we can just kind of brush through that a little bit because it was not as dramatic as what I was expecting. So as you guys probably already know, Ravi was given an offer from Victoria to join Newman Enterprises. And after not wanting to do it, basically Ravi decides he's going to because he thinks that that's how he's going to get with Ashley, by not working for her anymore. So he agreed. He goes in, he gives Ashley his 2 weeks notice, and Ashley ends up going over to Newman Enterprises, talking to Victoria herself, and pulling the, it's a conflict of, there's like a competitive clause in Ravi's contract that says that basically because Brash and Sassy is now owned by Newman Enterprises, Ravi cannot go from Jabot to Newman Enterprises. And I thought that was interesting, and like I said earlier, there's a lot of this conflict of interest that seems to be one of the themes of this week on the show. So basically, Ashley goes over there, and when she goes back to Jabot, she tells, Ravi finds out from Victoria too that he is not going to have a job over at Newman, and he's stuck there. And he does tell Ashley the truth. And I'm not sure what's going on with those two, because obviously Ravi really cares about Ashley and he wants a relationship. But sometimes I sense that with Ashley, sometimes I don't. And I feel really bad for him because he would go so far as to choose Ashley over his own career and try to switch companies just so he could be with Ashley. I like Ashley as a character, but I really want her to make a decision, and I want her to just, I don't know that I want her with Ravi. That's the whole thing, because I don't know that they are right together. And I feel like there's nothing against when characters have an age difference, but I feel like they're in two different places, maybe mentally. And that's why it doesn't feel like they're right together. But you guys tell me what you think in the chat. Let's see if we have some comments. So Hubby Joe says, I agree, Rachel. 1 minute everyone is getting along, then they jump to the hating each other part. Yeah. Hubby Joe, Ravi needs a bigger role. I like his character. I like his character too. And I love the fact that they are representing someone who works in IT. Now, as someone, I formerly worked in IT, so I don't always agree with how they approach the IT aspect of the show because, okay, I can tell you that they're wrong on a lot of things because I was working in IT, but I do like the fact that they have someone representing like this IT element and this IT guy. And I like his character, and I think he needs a bigger role. So I would love to see that. Aaron says, Billy has always been jealous and jaded of Kane. That makes sense. Taylor says, love Ashley. Taylor, ready for Kane and Lily to reunite. Yeah, me too. And Aaron says, me too, Taylor. Demo, yes, Kane and Lily reunion is good. I agree. Hubby Joe says, why was Ashley mad? Because he was quitting or because he took a job with Victoria? And that's a really good question. That's the other thing I was worried about, is that Ashley was mad for the wrong reasons. And again, I really like Ashley as a character, and I like Ravi as a character. I just don't know how I feel about them when they interact, because I think they want different things. And I think that Ashley may have been mad for the wrong reasons. Aaron says, Ashley was so upset when she found out Ravi was leaving, but she ignores him all the time. Yeah, exactly, she does. And she's not giving him as much as he's giving her. And that's probably my biggest issue with them, is that it's an unbalanced relationship. And it could be unbalanced because Ashley's his boss. And I understand that, which is exactly why Ravi was trying to move companies. But obviously, Ashley wants Ravi around for professional reasons, not for relationship reasons. So I hope that that situation gets resolved in a manner that is good for Ravi and not just good for Ashley. Aaron says, Ravi is hot. I love him. Dulaman, Ravi puts it down. Simone says, Ashley needs to stop playing games and tell Ravi what he wants from her. Yeah. Exactly. That's the whole thing, is that Ashley does need to stop playing games. And if she's not interested in him like that, well, at least not enough to be good enough for a relationship, she needs to tell him and stop saying to meet her at a hotel room for a one-night stand. That's all I'm saying with that. All right, so we talked about Ravi and Ashley. It's kind of nice to just mention that Jack and Ashley apologized to each other, but so it seemed like Jack and Ashley were going to be on better terms, but then Dina shows up and speaks to Jack alone, and she tore into Jack and basically told him that he couldn't run the company as good as his father, and that he was a disappointment. And I felt so bad for Jack, so bad. But then Jack has a scene alone with Ashley, and because of how his mother made him feel, he takes it out on Ashley. And basically, you can tell that he's taking out his anger instead of on Dina, who, I guess Dina would be the right person to take his anger out on, except for the fact that she's dealing with Alzheimer's, and maybe she said those things because of the disease and not because of who she is. So maybe he can't take his anger out on her. But in any case, Jack goes and he takes it out on Ashley. And I felt so bad for Ashley, worse than I felt bad for Jack, because Jack basically tells Ashley that, he doesn't say it like this, but he basically says that Ashley's only good to work in the lab. And it makes her feel like she can't be CEO, that she is making all these mistakes. And I really want Jack to come around and maybe not necessarily say, hey, be my co-CEO, if that's even a thing, but maybe at least make Ashley feel better. She is very loyal to him, and except for the fact that she called a board meeting to try and replace him as CEO, but in general, Ashley's very loyal to Jack, and I feel bad for her in that situation. I think she's worth more than just working in a lab. And yeah, she might be really good at it, but that doesn't mean that that's the only thing she's good at, and Jack shouldn't have made her feel that way. Hubby Joe, Jack was wrong how he handled the situation with Ashley. I agree. Taylor says, poor Jack. Sooner or later, he's going to have a breakdown. I agree, definitely. And that's the problem, is that Jack, there has been a lot of hinting that he's taking on more than he should be. Even Jack has kind of said that. And it's true. It's going to be really hard for him to run his company from home or otherwise with everything going on with Dina. What he's not recognizing is that taking care of someone in Dina's situation and condition, it's almost like a full-time job. You can't, like, it's one thing to have maybe a part-time working job or doing a little bit here and there at the office, but originally he wanted to step down or step away from Jabot and take care of his mother, and now he's putting his mother kind of in the second position place. So I don't think that's going to end well. I think he is going to need to make a decision. We have Jacob joining us. Hi, everyone. Hi, Rachel. Sorry I'm late. Don't be sorry. Thanks for joining. We're just talking about Jack and Ashley and Dina. Kimmy Sylvester's here. Hey, Kimmy. Welcome to the chat. And Simone says, Jack is all over the place. He has anger and anxiety, but has no idea how to deal with it. That's definitely something I picked up on, too, is that Jack, from what I've seen of him, too, and this is not just with Dina. In general, Jack seems like the kind of person who he'll have these things happen to him, and he feels like he has to let it sit. He doesn't always know how to talk about how he's feeling, and that, to me, is the problem, is that even with Nikki, he doesn't always tell her how he's feeling, and Nikki's, at least the way I read into their relationship, she's one of his closer friends that he usually can be open with, but even with her, he doesn't talk about these things, and that's the problem. He is going to boil over one of these days because he has so many things sitting, and he's not helping himself by festering over these things. Aaron says, yes, I love Ashley. This calling the board meeting behind Jack's back. Yes, definitely. I understood why she did it. I still think she's loyal. I think she just thought that that was the right thing to do in that situation. So, all right, we have everything happening with Jack and Ashley. Let's move on and talk about Newman Enterprises because we have a lot to discuss with that. Kind of toward the beginning of the week, we had Michael. He visits Victor, and here's some major foreshadowing, if I've ever seen foreshadowing in my life. Michael tells Victor that all his work accounts have cleared and he's good to go, but he doesn't want to speak too soon because they need to go over his personal accounts first. But of course, Michael assumes his personal accounts are going to be good, but I don't know, as soon as I heard him say that, I was like, nope, something's going to come up with the personal accounts. And what I thought is it was going to have everything to do with Kevin. And as we see, Kevin does come into the episodes, but I thought it was going to have to do with Kevin and Nick and how basically Victor obviously took Nick's money, and we don't know what he did with it exactly. We don't know how Kevin handled it. You would think that Kevin would have done it in a way that wouldn't necessarily raise red flags, but then again, how do you do something like that without raising red flags if it's so much money? So that's what I thought, is that it would have everything to do with that. So then, of course, Michael comes back and he has another meeting with Victor later and says, nope, sorry, we did jump the gun. We found something in your personal accounts. And what they found is some kind of anomaly or anomalies, plural, in one of Victor's bank accounts, which to me, again, was like, okay, Nick's money. And what they found was that it was this money that had been basically sent offshore, as they put it. Not clear exactly what that means. If anyone in the chat happens to work in finance and has an idea more of what's going on and what moving money offshore means, I'm assuming they just meant into a different account that had nothing to do with Victor, but feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that. Let's read some of the comments. So Demo says Jack needs emotional support. I want him to reunite with Phyllis. That would be interesting. Simone says, am I the only one seeing chemistry between Hillary and Jack? I see that too, actually. And Hillary, let me know what you guys think in the chat. Hillary seems to be a better person when she talks to Jack. So he seems to bring out a more caring version of her. And she seems to legitimately care about Jack too. Aaron says, I want Jack back with Nikki or with Phyllis. Yeah. Ultimately, that's what I want too. I want Jack with Nikki. I'm waiting for that. And I'm hoping, especially after this whole, money situation with Nikki and Victor, that Victor and Nikki will never get back together ever. Because I know that's like what happens always, is that Nikki always takes Victor back, but maybe this time it will be different. Demo, I see Hillary and Jack as friends. Aaron, Hillary belongs with Devon. Yeah, I actually like Hillary and Devon together too. Demo, Nikki belongs with Victor. Darn. Jack should be with Phyllis. Taylor, Hillary and Jack are a great friendship. Taylor, but if they hook up, Hillary and Jack, if Hillary and Jack hook up, I'm going to go off the wall. Demo, want Chelsea with Jordan, not Nick. That would be good too. I agree. I don't want Chelsea with Nick. Definitely not. I don't know. They just seem like a boring couple to me. I want Nick and Sharon, and we will definitely touch on everything going on with Sharon too. Aaron, where's Jordan? That's a really good question. Maybe it has something to do with, his identities being revealed in Genoa City, and after he did what he needed to do with Hillary and the sex pictures, or not sex pictures, but, the revealing pictures, maybe Jordan decided he was going to leave town because after he was done with his revenge, he didn't want to be in Genoa City anymore, but maybe we'll see him again. Maybe I'm completely off on that. Simone, my first thought was Nikki is sending money to Dylan somehow. Interesting. Hubby Joe, you're correct, Rachel. The money was moved to another account outside of the U.S. Oh, okay, offshore. That makes sense. Okay, so we get into everything with this money situation and the anomaly in Victor's account. Kevin and Michael, so we see Kevin again. Kevin and Michael have a conversation where Michael wants Kevin to help him figure out what's going on. And Kevin basically gets out of it by saying, no, this would be 100% illegal. However, this conversation solidified the fact that Kevin's obviously involved with this, or maybe Kevin just thinks he's involved with this and that it has nothing to do with him, which would shock me. And it turns out it has everything to do with Nikki and nothing to do with Kevin and what he did with Nick's money, which everything with Nick's money still feels very unresolved to me. And whatever happened with the charity situation, does anyone in the chat want to touch on that if it was brought up again, because it just seems to have dropped. Now here's the thing that I found the most interesting with everything with Kevin this week. We see this phone conversation, and when we saw it in the previews, I thought that Kevin at first was talking to Victor, because I think in the previews you didn't hear him say Victor's name. So not that Kevin would talk to Victor like this, but I felt like he was going to basically go off on Victor and say, hey, everyone knows what we did with, Nick's money. Now, as we heard in the actual episode, what Kevin says is, it won't be long before the truth unravels and Victor discovers what you did. So, this is before we knew about Nikki. I was not sure who he was talking to. I'm still not 100% sure. Was it Nikki? It's probably Nikki. That's my guess now. Another possibility is JT, but at least the way that JT is playing this, he's acting like he doesn't know anything until Victoria tells him. So my bet is it's most likely Nikki, but chances are it could be JT, who has been shown to do a little, number one, JT has been shown not to trust Victoria because he thinks that the reason why Reed doesn't want to see him is because of Victoria and something that she's doing. So obviously, JT still has some grievances against Victoria, and he could be lying to her about his involvement in all this. Obviously, he's the guy investigating everything going on with Victor's accounts. but he could be lying about what he knows, and maybe he's there for another reason altogether. So those are just my thoughts. We have a couple more comments in the chat. Demo says Phyllis would be angry if Jack was with Hillary. That's probably true. And Aaron says Phyllis would be mad more if Jack goes back to Gloria. I don't see Jack and Gloria being an actual couple. I see them as really good friends, and obviously Gloria and Jack have each other's backs. I don't see them being together. But you guys tell me what you think about that. Demo, Gloria is a trip. Yeah, Gloria is almost always my law moments. She always makes me laugh, and even if I don't have her in the law moment, chances are she did something that made me laugh this week. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but she's definitely the most animated character on the show. Okay, so JT shows up, of course. He starts talking with Victoria. They kind of go back and forth. And finally, we get everything that happens with Nikki. And Nikki basically tells, she's talking to Jack at first, saying that she's done something that she doesn't know how she's going to fix it, basically. And Nikki goes, after she has this conversation with Jack, she goes to Victoria and tells Victoria exactly what she's done. And so we learn that Nikki has been the one, Nikki's the reason behind this weird like red flag in Victor's personal accounts, because she's been the one moving money to an offshore account. So the question is Nikki moving? Okay, number one, did Nikki make the bid on that, on the land, on the park? Because I am leaning towards yes, she definitely did, and that the money she moved offshore is either Nick's money that somehow she found out about and somehow found out was in Victor's account, or it's just money from Victor that she moved and then used that money to buy the park, which in the end could bite her, like could bite them all, could bite everyone in the back, like because if it turns out it's technically Victor's money that bought the property, then he can probably go and build whatever he wants there. But what I'm curious about is why Victor didn't realize this was happening. Because it couldn't just be that it sounds like large amounts of money were moved. And unless this was an Office Space situation where they tried to move like pennies at a time, or sorry, where Nikki tried to move pennies at a time, something tells me that it was a large chunk of money moved at once, and I'm very shocked that Victor didn't see it, unless somehow it's not, the anomaly has nothing to do with Nikki, and we're going to find that out later, and Nikki did something else that was smaller, but I don't know. Something's not adding up, and I think that Kevin is probably working with Nikki too, and that they're both trying to get back at Victor. Jacob says, the actor that plays Kevin, he's going to be on Days of Our Lives. I wonder if he will also be on Y&R as well, the way Eileen Davidson has done. Huh, interesting. I didn't know that. So I'm guessing since Days of Our Lives is not a sister show, he's just playing a different role altogether. Aaron, I loved Gloria versus Dina. Yes, and that's one of my lol moments, their whole entire cat fight. Simone says, either Nikki bought the park, got Nick's money back, or she is giving it to Dylan. I could see all of those definitely being things that were happening. So I guess we'll just have to see, because it seems like that's another thing. You know how we've been talking about how this week went like really fast? I really think we needed some kind of a hint that Nikki was going to be involved in this at all. Nothing that actually told us, and maybe there was a hint and we all missed it. If anyone can think of something hinting to this moment, please let me know in the chat. But as far as from what I remember, there's been no mention of Nikki randomly going behind Victor's back and doing something like this. And if this has been happening, we needed a moment where we saw Nikki doing something, and then it would make more sense. This just seems a little contrived if you ask me, but let me know what you guys think. Either in the chat, or if you want to drop a comment, if you're watching this after it's been recorded already, then yeah, feel free to comment too. Aaron says, I thought Nikki took the money to buy the park. Yeah, that was my first initial reaction, was exactly that. And the fact that we find out about Nikki right around the time we find out there's been an anonymous bid. I think it was like right after we found out about Nikki. So it just seems too convenient that those two events would be that close to each other and not related at all. And if Nikki isn't the anonymous buyer, then who could it even be? Unless it's somehow Victor and he just wanted to be anonymous, but I don't think so. Demo says, I feel like Y&R will come up with a twist for this Nikki story. Yeah, I feel like they will and they should, because if it's not a twist, I don't know if it works very well. Aaron says, how did Nikki even get into Victor's company bank accounts? Yeah, exactly, unless Kevin's working with her. But then if Kevin's working with her, then I don't understand how Victor wouldn't know and wouldn't realize. And if Victor is, if Kevin's behind this, I don't think that it would have come up as easily as far as what I've seen Kevin do, because I know that Victor wasn't under investigation before, but if he was able to get money if Kevin was able to get money out of Nick's account with no red flags anywhere, I don't see why this particular situation would be a red flag, unless it is because of the investigation, and that's the only reason. Taylor says, as a big Days of Our Lives fan, this week will be so good for it, especially. Hubby Joe, did Kevin help Nikki and double-cross Victor? I wouldn't be surprised, but at the same time, I feel like Kevin has too much to lose. Victor's the one behind. Victor basically let him leave Genoa City and let him move to Portland with Chloe and his daughter, Bella. I'm pretty positive her name is Bella. Correct me if I'm wrong. So you would think that Kevin would remember this and not want to cause any problems unless Nikki has something on Kevin. And maybe that's the twist we're going to find out. Taylor Jones says, I think Kevin is working with her because of the phone call. The phone call is very interesting. Yeah, definitely. Demo, I don't think it's the right time to bring back Dylan. Not yet. Yeah, and I've been hearing a lot of rumors about Adam coming back too, so I don't know what you guys think about that. Aaron says, Nikki stealing from Victor doesn't even seem like her character. That's another thing. I agree with you. She does not. First of all, Nikki keeps saying, don't cross Victor. Don't do this. Victor always gets his way. He'll find, like, Nikki, more than pretty much every single character, knows what Victor is capable of. She's warned other characters. Every time there's a situation with Victor, she is the first one. Even with Chelsea, I think 2 weeks ago, Nikki was basically saying, no, you don't want to cross Victor. Like, don't cross that man. I don't think Nikki would be the one to do this. I feel like, I almost wonder if she's covering for someone, which would be an interesting twist. So, all right, we spoke a lot about everything going on with Nikki. We kind of touched on JT and Victoria. The biggest thing to touch on with that is this sort of gets into everything happening with Kane a little bit. I'll just say that obviously Reed didn't want to go and see JT for whatever reason. And I think what bugged me about that is, like we said earlier, Reed, we didn't really see his perspective and why at first. Eventually we kind of did, and eventually Reed goes, and we basically learned that for a while, JT, technically I guess JT still has custody over Reed. I think that's what they were saying on this week's Y&R. But that I guess Reed has decided just to stay back in Genoa City. And it seems like I actually kind of liked Reed's reaction once we got it, because he was basically saying he was upset at his dad for not really thinking of him and not really like Reed basically feels like an afterthought. And I completely get that, and it seems like a very reasonable reaction, especially for a teenager to have. So I felt like Reed was very teenagery, if that makes sense, and that it was very in character for him to be upset about those things. And once we saw, once Reed was tricked into seeing JT, basically that was Kane's doing. And I don't know what you guys think about Kane now. I do want him and Lily to get back together, but Kane is starting to show his like cocky side again. But in any case, Kane basically tricks Reed into coming to see JT because he sets it up so that he calls Maddie, says, "Hey Maddie, what are you doing? Let's go get dinner or lunch or whatever it was." And Kane invites Reed. So Maddie thinks that it's Kane trying to give Reed more of a chance. When they show up, when Maddie and Reed show up, not only do they find out that JT is there, but Reed and Maddie say that they're not going to leave each other's side, and then Kane and JT pull them away from each other so that they can eat separately. I thought that was really messed up on not just Kane's part, but JT's part too. That's not how you handle that situation, especially if Reed and Maddie have each other. They are their emotional support. And if you were going to make Reed go and see his father, who he really doesn't want to see, at least let him have his girlfriend there for support so that they can be there for each other. That's, I think, how it should have been handled. So I kind of didn't like how Kane did that, and I didn't like how they pulled each other apart either, so that Reed and Maddie couldn't at least sit together during this whole situation. I get that JT was trying to talk to his son alone, but Reed is close enough to Maddie where JT could have just talked to Reed in front of Maddie anyway, and it might have been better. And maybe for the relationship too, it could have been every negative feeling that Kane's still having, that's still lingering, maybe that could have been, brushed aside too. And that's the other thing, is that, so I've only been watching YNR since May, and I didn't realize that JT, who I believe is married to Mac, that Mac had carried Charlie and Maddie. So now I'm questioning Kane even more. I get that Reed is also the son of Victoria, but I don't see, because JT seems to be friendly with Kane, and because JT is married to Mac, you would think that Kane would have been more okay with Maddie dating Reed than he was, because of not Victoria, but because of the fact that this is JT and JT's son, who JT's married to Mac. So you would think that Kane would have been okay with it, but I don't know. That whole thing, didn't really like that whole thing that went on. So Aaron says, JT said he and Mackenzie had another baby. When did that happen? Now they have a son and now a daughter. That's interesting, and another example of, it just sounds like there was a lot of exposition written into the dialogue. Taylor, I'm happy they mentioned Mac. Simone, I felt bad for Reed. He was probably feeling ambushed. Yeah, exactly. That is definitely not the way to do it. Reed handled that whole situation amazingly well. So I just want to give a round of applause for him, because any other teenager would probably have been freaking out because of the way that was handled. Reed, in that moment, was very mature. Aaron says, right, Taylor, they didn't show her, but at least they mentioned her. Demo, JT is harsh. Yeah. From the little bit I've seen of JT, I don't know that I like him. He seems like he can kind of be a major jerk, especially with how he was very friendly with Victoria. And then as soon as he got alone with Kane, he didn't exactly bash Victoria, but he kind of did a little bit. Like, he made it sound like Victoria was someone that wronged people, and that Victoria was probably pushing Reed away from him. So obviously JT is kind of like two-faced. He didn't say any of that to Victoria. Taylor says, interested to see how JT acts this time around. Yeah, me too. Not that I knew him from before, because JT is a new character to me, but I'm curious to see how his role will play out this time. So, all right, we have everything happening with them. Let's touch on everything happening with Scott, Faith, Sharon, Mariah, because that was a lot. Okay, so first of all, let me just kind of summarize that basically Faith saw Scott and Abby kissing, and instead of telling Sharon about it, she just doesn't want to be in the same room with Scott anymore, which is completely understandable. So I understand how Faith is reacting to it. Basically, Faith sees it, and she sort of, well, she does eventually tell Mariah. And then when Mariah finds out, Mariah, she doesn't know how far it's gone. The only person outside of Scott and Abby who now know that Scott and Abby have slept together is Lily, because Abby told her during Girl Talk. And yeah, I don't think Lily's going to tell anyone, but Mariah doesn't know that Scott and Abby have slept together. So first, there's this whole situation with Scott and Sharon where Sharon says she loves Scott, and Scott says it back, but the way that he says it, it didn't mean, like, he didn't seem like he actually meant it. So it sounded very off to me. So they're having a whole argument over that because Scott is kind of acting like he doesn't love her, even though he said the words. Eventually, Scott and Sharon do resolve it, though. When Scott says he's going to try to be honest with her, I thought Scott was actually going to open up and tell Sharon everything that happened with Abby, but he didn't. And that is, to me, is the most messed up part of it, because yeah, fine, whatever situation you were in, whatever situation Scott was in, obviously he was freaking out when he was stuck in that room. Okay, things happen. Not that that's a good reason for it to happen, but he should have been honest with Sharon, even if it was going to hurt her. He should have been honest, because if you're not going to be honest in a relationship, you're setting it up for failing right off the bat. But I think the worst part is that Scott has still been kissing Abby. It's like, okay, fine, that really bad thing happened. Why are you still kissing Abby if you keep saying you want to be with Sharon? So Scott has not been honest with Sharon. He's still kissing Abby. There's still obviously tension and chemistry between them. Abby does stand up for herself, though, and finally says, no, I'm not going to be the other woman. We're going to stay away from each other. And then she leaves. That's kind of where they ended. Mariah, who's found out from Faith that Abby and Scott have kissed, she basically goes to Scott and says, hey, I don't know if anything else went beyond that, but yeah, it better not happen again, because so Sharon is not going to hear this from me, but P.S. Scott, you saw how I kidnapped someone for a girl I barely knew. What do you think I'm going to do to someone who hurts my mother? And it was like, okay, yeah. Mariah means business. So that's kind of where that ended off. We have everything with Kane and Lily. It's still kind of up in the air what's happening with them. All I'm going to say about Kane is that he just seems way too cocky for his own good. He's starting to get that Kane, step again, where it's like, oh, is he going to start doing stupid things? You would hope not, after everything that he went through with Lily. I still do want them to get back together, but it sounds like Lily is still really on the fence about it. So, all right, let's get to our law moment. Okay, so we mentioned this already, but every time that Gloria steps into the room, it's like almost automatically a law moment in and of itself. So we had Gloria and Dina fighting, and I'm not going to say the full word out loud in case we have children watching, but basically Dina says, call a bee, which was hilarious, after Gloria tried to use her condition in her face, which I'm still on Gloria's side. I don't care if Dina has Alzheimer's. Dina can just be a real bee. Okay, so then later, after this whole cat fight ends, Dina is talking to Jack about Gloria and says, tell the help I'm done for the day. Okay, I started cracking up. Now, the final law moment is when Billy was texting Phyllis. He was in the same room with her. He was sitting at a bar watching her, texting on his phone, and he's basically telling Phyllis that he wants to ravish her. I started cracking up with that too, especially when Phyllis mouthed the words about Billy being a bad boy. I was like, okay, when did this become a comedy? It was hilarious. Okay, so let me just touch on a few of the comments, and then we'll get to predictions. Okay, so Taylor says, Gloria versus Dina, I couldn't breathe. Aaron says, oh my God, Abby and Scotty. Taylor, call a bee, iconic. Yeah, exactly. Simone, Lily is still on the fence if she should trust Kane at this point, and I completely understand that. Ralph says JT will go after Phyllis to get to Billy. I could see that too. Ralph, Jill will try to sell Chancellor. And then Simone says, Gloria and Dina have me. They definitely had me too. It was hilarious. So, okay, with our final couple minutes here, let's talk about some predictions.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
I think that Kevin's working with Nikki and that we're going to find out that, well, they're working together, but it's going to turn out that it has, even though Nikki decided to be the front person for this, it's going to turn out that it's actually someone else who was moving the money or that wanted the money to be moved, and that there's this whole big thing going against Victor that we have not been made aware of until now. Scott and Abby, like, I know I wanted them to be together. Now I'm just starting to get annoyed with Scott. So prediction-wise, what I really want to have happen is that Sharon finds out that Scott keeps kissing Abby. Sharon maybe sees it for herself, and they break up, and maybe Scott and Abby, I don't know that I even want them to get together at first, because that would seem weird. That they would just jump into a relationship with each other, especially with Scott saying he doesn't want to be with Abby. So those are my major predictions. Taylor Jones says, prediction, Reed will open up to Maddie or Charlie about whatever JT did. Yeah, and maybe there was something deeper that we just don't know yet. So it'll be interesting to see. I just want to let you guys know before we wrap up that we are actually, the AfterBuzz studio is closed for the next 2 weeks. So we're not going to have a show on the 24th or the 31st. So I wanted to wish you all a very happy holidays, and I hope you guys have a great New Year. I will be back here on the 7th doing the show, the same time, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you again to everyone in the chat who has joined us. My name is Rachel Goodman. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at Rach Goodman, or on Facebook at Rachel Ann Goodman. Also, you should definitely go over to Facebook and like the @Restless Rap page, because I'm always posting over there. In the 2 weeks that we're off, I'd love to still hear what you guys have to say about the show. So thank you for joining. Happy holidays, and we'll see you next year.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.